Have you ever wondered who the wives of the Nephilim were? Those terrifying giants. And if they existed, how could anyone find the courage to stand beside these colossal males? What would it have been like to live in the shadow of beings standing 15, 16 feet tall? Could anyone survive without being crushed by their immense power? These questions are hardly ever asked. You definitely won't hear them in Sunday sermons. But here's the thing, these questions hold way more mystery and fascination than anything we've been told. What if there were female giants just as imposing and terrifying as their male counterparts? Could they have actually existed? Were these women perhaps the daughters of giants themselves? Or maybe the wives of the Nephilim? Or could they be part of an entirely separate lineage of giant women? What if these giantesses weren't just offspring of the Nephilim, but their own undiscovered bloodline with unique roles in human history? Tonight, we're uncovering what might be one of the Bible's most deeply buried secrets. If you're ready to learn these forbidden truths, drop 777 in the comments and don't forget to hit that like button. Let's dive into this mysterious journey together. The giants' wives and the shocking reality of female giants. Let's face this reality. The Bible is packed with stories of giant men, but there's virtually no mention of giant women. Is this silence just coincidence? Or is it pointing to something deeper, something more disturbing? This eerie silence isn't limited to the Bible. From ancient legends to modern times, in mythologies, even in apocryphal writings, it's the same story everywhere. It's as if all civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, somehow agreed on this point. From the frost giants of Norse sagas to the titans of Greek mythology, it's always male figures taking center stage. Female giants feel more like ghosts, sensed as an absence rather than a presence. Isn't that weird? How do so many different cultures, across so many different time periods, end up agreeing on the same thing? And are there stories we're missing? Scrolls lost to fire or decay? Or memories too terrifying to pass down? If you lived back then, would you have had the courage to look into the eyes of a woman twice your height, knowing she carried the mixed blood of rebellious angels and mortal humans in her veins? This mysterious silence wraps the Nephilim story in an even thicker fog of mystery. It's like the pages themselves are hesitating, reluctant to speak, leaving curious souls across millennia chasing echoes of answers in unreachable corridors. Is the absence of these towering female figures just simple oversight, or does it whisper of truths deliberately veiled for reasons lost to time? Maybe this silence reflects a cultural lens, one that shaped grand narratives around masculine heroes and giants as part of a symbolic tapestry meant to convey power, rebellion, or corruption of the flesh. But doesn't this eerie quiet also suggest something possibly more profound, maybe even unsettling? Could it mean that giantesses never existed at all? That the mingling of watchers and daughters of men only ever produced male monstrosities, embodiments of divine transgression stamped into masculine form? Or is there a darker possibility that tales of these immense women were too disturbing, too potent, and thus purposefully erased from collective memory? The first major theory takes us to a surprising possibility. What if the Nephilim were inherently sterile beings? These creatures, born from the mixing of angelic essence with mortal flesh, might have stood outside the ordinary cycles of birth and lineage. Those who lean into this interpretation point first to the extraordinary lifespans of early humanity in Scripture. Genesis genealogies are dotted with staggering ages. Adam lived 930 years, Noah reached 950, and Methuselah's days stretched to an almost unimaginable 969 years. If ordinary men could touch the brink of a millennium, what might we expect of creatures whose veins ran thick with the mingling of heaven's rebellious essence and earth's fragile dust? Maybe these giants could walk the world for even longer spans, outlasting entire kingdoms and the rise and fall of countless families. From this angle, giants weren't just physical monuments, they were living witnesses to forbidden union. They could wander the earth for 1,000 years or more, watching generation after generation of ordinary men rise, struggle, and return to dust, all while they themselves continued largely unchanged. If you could live for 1,000 years, would you feel any urgency about raising children to carry on your name? Or would your own existence, stretched across ages, be enough to carve your story deep into the world's memory? This line of thought helps explain one of the thorniest riddles in the biblical record. How did giants reappear after the flood? Wasn't that cataclysmic deluge meant to wipe the slate clean, sparing only Noah's family? Maybe the same fallen angels dared to breach heaven and earth's boundaries again, despite having already experienced divine wrath. Perhaps these celestial rebels, despite the divine fury they'd already faced, once again violated the limits between sky and soil. This view finds subtle support in scriptures that hint at ongoing defiance of these angelic beings. Jude warns of angels who didn't keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper dwelling. And 2 Peter speaks of sinning angels cast into gloomy dungeons, though some interpretations leave open the haunting possibility that not all were fully restrained. According to this theory, giants didn't need female versions. They were already outside the cycle of generational transfer. Their lives stretched so long that they themselves became living chronicles, whispering of a defiance that wouldn't die even under the weight of divine floodwaters. The second major perspective opens a much bolder door. What if towering women did walk alongside these colossal men? What if these weren't just legendary wives, but perhaps the true partners of these massive beings? Those who champion this idea start with striking logic. If there really were giants standing 10-16 feet tall, wouldn't joining with average-sized human women create both logistical oddities and biological challenges? Such an extraordinary mismatch would pose not just practical weirdness, but biological impossibilities. Wouldn't these giants have needed partners who mirrored their formidable scale? This theory gains even more weight when we look closely at how ancient texts, especially the Bible, chose to tell their stories. Throughout Hebrew scriptures, we see that women, though undeniably vital to their communities, were often given only passing mention in genealogies and historical accounts. Could this selective storytelling, born from deeply patriarchal norms of the ancient Semitic world, be the very reason we hear so little about giant women? In biblical tradition, lineage was meticulously traced through men. Names of fathers and sons were recorded, etched onto scrolls that would be read aloud for generations. Women, by contrast, though they upheld families with the same breath and toil, frequently found themselves noted only briefly or entirely omitted. Look at how genealogies from Adam to Noah or from Abraham to David march forward through sons, leaving wives and mothers largely in the silent background. It's striking that even figures like Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel appear mainly when their stories directly intersect with the men who define the lineage. This focus on male heirs and patriarchal accomplishment didn't stop at genealogies. It bled into grand narratives of triumphs, battles, and judgments, where men's deeds took center stage, while women's contributions were often pushed to the dim edges of memory. Could it be then that if giantesses did exist, their absence in the record isn't proof of their non-existence, but rather a testament to the cultural lens that wrote history itself? Under this lens, the idea that giants had female partners becomes more than just anatomical logic. It emerges as a plausible explanation shaped by the very patterns of omission common to the ancient world. After all, if towering men strode across valleys and built domains, wouldn't it stand to reason that they shared their lives and possibly their destinies with towering women? Picture it for just a breath, standing among such a people. Would you glimpse at the edges of a giant settlement and see immense women drawing water from rivers, teaching colossal children how to weave or plant, or perhaps even offering counsel to their mighty husbands on matters of rule? Could the legends that filtered down to us, clipped and narrowed by patriarchal priorities, have simply failed to carry these images forward? The third and perhaps most unsettling theory suggests this. What if female giants were so powerful, so dangerous, so influential that their stories were deliberately scrubbed from history's pages? According to this view, giant women didn't just exist, they were more organized, more intelligent, maybe even more influential than their male counterparts. And that's why their memories were carefully cleaned out to avoid wrongly influencing future generations. There are other examples in history. Names of powerful female leaders were later changed, their achievements attributed to men, even traces of their existence were erased. Did giant women get the same treatment? Maybe these women weren't just wives and mothers, but also warriors, leaders, sorceresses, wise women. Maybe they were seen as more threatening than the male giants. Think about it. How terrifying would a 12-foot-tall woman be who combined physical strength with strategic intelligence? For normal humans, such a being's mental superiority, along with physical dominance, would be a complete nightmare. Maybe these women's stories were considered too dangerous by ancient writers. Maybe their memories were covered up out of fear they would wrongly empower women. Or maybe these female giants had different abilities than their male counterparts. Maybe they excelled in spiritual powers, prophecy, healing, and these abilities didn't fit with ancient religious understanding. They posed a threat. In Gnostic texts, apocryphal writings, among forgotten scrolls, maybe traces of these giant women are hidden. Maybe their stories were carefully cleaned from mainstream texts, but continued living in secret traditions. The most striking evidence for this theory is found in mythological comparisons. The powerful Titan women in Greek mythology, the giant princesses in Norse legends, they all feature equally powerful female figures. What if the biblical tradition also knew such women, but decided not to record them? This could be not just a cultural choice, but an ideological one. The uncomfortable truth is that without direct evidence or explicit testimony, we can't definitively declare that giantesses never drew breath in the world's early mists. Maybe the real question isn't whether they existed, but why so many voices across time chose not to tell their stories. And doesn't that silence, in its own haunting way, speak volumes? Today, archaeological discoveries are shedding new light on these ancient mysteries. Giant skeletons found in various parts of the world, megalithic structures, abnormally sized tools. Do these belong only to men? Here's a striking detail. In some ancient graves, skeletal remains that exceed normal human measurements but show distinctly female characteristics have been found. These remains support the female giant theory. Especially in South America, North America, and some European regions, among skeletons measuring 10 to 13 feet tall, there are examples that are clearly female based on pelvic structure and other anatomical features. But here's the most interesting detail. When these remains are discovered, they're often lost or destroyed by official authorities. It's as if someone doesn't want this evidence to surface. Facing this situation, we can ask, is the existence of female giants not just an ancient curiosity, but still a threat to the modern world order? Maybe the story of female giants isn't just about the past. Maybe this story holds secrets about women's true power, potential, and role in society that are still relevant today. Genetic research also provides intriguing clues. There are unexplained fragments in human DNA. These are called junk DNA, but maybe these fragments are traces left by ancient hybrid beings, and some of these genetic traces appear more strongly in women. Maybe the legacy of female giants is still living among us. In conclusion, the topic of giants' wives isn't just ancient curiosity. This holds deep questions about humanity's origins, male-female relationships, power dynamics, and even our future. Maybe the real message is this: history is written by the victors, and most of the time, the victors have been men. But this doesn't mean other stories didn't exist. The story of female giants isn't just about them. This is the story of all powerful women, forgotten by history, all suppressed female voices, all female achievements left in shadow. And maybe this story continues today. Maybe today's women carry the legacy of those ancient giant women, not just in physical strength, but in spiritual, mental, and social power. The giants of old, no matter how fearsome, eventually gave way. So too can the struggles we face. Sometimes the smallest acts of bravery or a single step of faith is all it takes to start toppling what once seemed immovable. What are your thoughts? Did female giants really exist? Or is this just a gap created by male-centered history writing? We're waiting for your comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because these mysteries still hold many secrets waiting to be solved.